We've seen a little bit about how to write the code to define an object, and now let's take a look at how we actually make and use the objects. And the syntax is like we've seen before. We have the type of the object we want, and then a name, usually a useful name for the object, and then an equal sign, and then something to initialize the object. So here we see account 1 being declared and defined as a new account with $100 in it. So just like we might say int size equal 300, we can say account1 equals, and then some value that could substitute for an account. So the account variable account1 could take on any account, and we happen to initialize it to be this new account with $100 in it. But later on, we could reassign it to reference some other account or even to reference null. We'll see that later on. So these declarations are just like the ones we've seen before, but let's break down what happens step by step. So like all assignment statements, the right-hand side is evaluated first. New account 100 is the part that we look at first. That calls a constructor, and the constructor we're going to look for inside the account object takes in an integer as its only parameter, and we saw that constructor before. So new account triggers the constructor call. Once the $100 is passed into initial balance, that constructor runs its code just like any method would, and results in assigning this .balance equal 100, and so the instance variable now has $100 in it. The resulting account object is returned by the constructor. Even though it has no official declared return type, it really does return an object of a type account, and that's assigned to account 1. So by saying new account with whatever we put inside the parentheses, we run the constructor for the account object. The result is an object which is then returned and perhaps assigned to a variable like account 1. Here we see a second object instantiated, new account 50, which is assigned to account 2. And so account 2 is a separate object from account 1. That's important to realize. Getting the balance and depositing on those two accounts are completely separate operations, just like your bank account and my bank account ought to be separate. An analogy that we often use in terms of a constructor, which sort of comes to light now that we've seen these uses of account, is to view the constructor as a cookie cutter. That every time you call the constructor, a new cookie is cut, and that particular cookie, in this case, has the balance initially that's specified as the parameter to the constructor. So if you say new account 100, it's like a $100 account cookie has been cut. The cookie cutter itself is the constructor. It's what gives birth to the objects, and the cookies are the created objects. So if I say new account 50, another cookie is cut separate from the first cookie, representing an account that has $50 inside of it. So let's take our account 1 object and run some methods on it. So the syntax for doing this is to mention the object reference. In this case, it's account 1, ACCT1, followed by a dot, and then to mention the method you wish to call on that object. So account1.deposit35. If I were saying this in English, I would say, hey, account 1, go off and run your deposit method and deposit $35 into your balance. So we mention the account with a dot following it, and then the name of the method, followed by any information needed by that method's parameters. How does this work? Inside the object, the account object, the variable this has taken on the value of account 1. In other words, this account, now that we're running this method, is referring to the account 1 object, which previously had $100 in it. Now we're depositing 35, so the 35 gets bound to the funds. 100 added to 35 gives us 135, and this .balance now has $135 in it for the account 1 object. The account 2 object is completely undisturbed by any of this. Now the method is void, so account.deposit doesn't return anything, but we would say it has the side effect of adding $35 to the balance of account 1. Now if we want to find out the balance, we provided a method called getBalance, and it's the same syntax. We mention ACCT1 followed by a dot, and then the method name getBalance will return the balance of that particular account. And so this print line causes the following message to be printed, balance 1, 135. Now suppose we want to make a new account. Let's call it account 3, and we're going to get the balance of account 2 just to find out how much it has in it, and multiply that by 3. So in English I might say, let's make a new account whose initial balance is 3 times the current value of account 2. So we get the current value of account 2 by saying account2.getBalance. That's going to return 50. We multiply that by 3 to get 150, and then we call the constructor on the value 150, and it does what it did before. It creates a new cookie, a new object, a new account object, whose initial balance is $150. And if I tried to print that out afterwards, the print line that you see here would produce balance 3, 150.